Welcome to the next chapter of As the Story Grows. I'm Brad Patton. Today we welcome Kevin Klein from Valleyheart to the podcast. Valleyheart released Heal My Head on June 3rd via Tooth & Nail Records. Early on in this chat, Kevin and I realized we have a mutual friend, and I love how small the world can be. Kevin and I chat about the Rise Records crabcore scene, losing busyness and slowing down to reflect on your life, and leaning into uncertainty. I'm trying to revamp the As the Story Grows Patreon page, and I'm curious what types of perk would interest you, the listener, and get you to sign up. Do you want the interviews early, or record reviews, or exclusive playlist? Hit me up at asthestorygrows@gmail.com and tell me what type of content and perks would get you to sign up for Patreon. Enjoy today's conversation with Kevin Klein from Valleyheart. Thanks for hanging out so early.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I don't know. I guess it depends on when you wake up. I've been up since 5. So,
are you on the East Coast?
I am. Yeah.
Where at?
DC.
DC, cool.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm in Montreal.
Oh, bad.
Yeah. So I was in Boston though this weekend, and I just got back last night. So yeah.
Awesome. What took you to Montreal?
So my wife is from here, so I live here now temporarily, and do a lot of back and forth traveling to go to the band in Boston, but technically spend half my time here. So yeah, it's a pretty split difference, you know?
Yeah. How'd you wind up with a girl from Montreal?
We met when I was playing a show here in Montreal in 2018. Yeah. We actually met on this. So yeah, oddly enough, we met on the street that we live on now. It's pretty crazy.
That's funny.
Yeah, ironically, we sort of happened to live on the same street that we met on when we were both in 2018. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
How's that going back and forth between Canada and the States currently?
It's awesome. It's tiring sometimes, but it's great. I mean, we knew from the beginning that being a long distance couple, whether we were dating or engaged or even married, would present challenges, and kind of leaning into the wildness of it all is fun. I mean, like I said, I do a lot of, especially now because we're releasing a record, I was back home and then we have shows. So it's like a lot of back and forth, and it gets pretty wild sometimes, but we have like friends in on it where like my buddy came and picked me up and hung out and stayed over, and it's not that far of a drive. It's about 6 hours. So, you know, it's not like unbearable. So yeah, it's been fun. I mean, living here has been the first time I've moved out of like my hometown to a different place, yet alone a different country. Right. So It's been exciting. It's been like I've been here for almost a year now, and it's been really cool learning French too. And just being a part of a different culture altogether has been really neat.
That's awesome.
Nice bass. I think I have the same exact one.
Nice.
Bass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that maroon or what?
Yep.
Dude, yeah, same one.
Yeah, same one. Nice.
That's what the whole new record is on this bass.
Oh, rad. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly the same bass. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, my neck is a little fucked up. I gotta get that realigned. But
yeah, dude, they're good basses. I think P basses, they're just for the price, and they're so good. They just have that like mid-range pop that you just want, you know?
Yeah, it's great. It's awesome. So you're originally East Coast from New England, Boston area, or?
So I was born in New York City when I was a kid. Of course, I was a kid when I was born, and lived there till I was about 9 in Queens, and then moved to Boston when I was around 9 or 10, and then have been not from Boston itself, but from different cities around it, different suburbs.
Yeah.
But when I moved last year, I was living in Salem, Massachusetts, which is essentially where we're from. Our drummer's from Salem. Our bassist and I were roommates for many years. And, you know, a lot of the guys, the North Shore of Boston is like essentially where I grew up and had sort of my formative, you know, years. And then, yeah, moved here last year.
Right.
Yeah.
It's awesome. What got you into music?
Well, when I was a kid, so my story is I don't have musical parents or parents who even got me into the culture of music at a young age. They were both pretty, you know, people who were like, oh yeah, music, cool, but like didn't really love music. So I kind of had to find my own path for it. And when I was younger, I would go into these sort of stark phases of affinities in like middle school, as you do. And I was super into skateboarding at one point. And for a long time, I was super into like baseball and like baseball culture, and just kind of, I have a sort of an obsessive, I had an obsessive nature / I still do, but like this sort of going all in on a hobby and like just immersing yourself and just getting obsessed with it for like 6 months. But I think at that time, I didn't have the self-discipline as a kid to like hang on to those things. I just kind of got obsessed with it and then like, all right, I'm done. And then threw it away, you know?
Yeah.
But music came along in 7th grade, and it was through a friend who I had met through school, we started playing music together and jamming out. And he was a drummer, and I was like, oh, like I need to learn how to play guitar so we can jam, because we were listening to all these. At the time, I got I was just into metal. Because I grew up like pretty Christian and wasn't really allowed to listen to a lot of stuff. And then as I sort of had my rebellious teenage phases, I started getting into bands like Metallica and like Slayer, which is hilarious because it's funny. Like I don't really listen to metal much anymore. But at the time, like in middle school, I was super into it. And it was Metallica that like kind of got me in the door. So yeah, and had to convince my parents to get me a guitar because I sort of let them down in a lot of ways in terms of getting into stuff and then throwing it away. Like the skateboarding, they had bought me a skateboard and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm not interested anymore. So to prove it to them, I had to like, I remember so they were like, we can't buy you a guitar yet. We didn't grow up very wealthy. We were kind of like, you know, we didn't have a lot of money. So
yeah.
I like cut out these pieces of paper and I drew like 6 lines on it and made like a fake fretboard. And I was like, well, if I'm not going to have a guitar, at least I'm going to get a head start and start learning the chords. So I would look at these like YouTube lessons, and I never took a guitar lesson in my life, but started like watching stuff online, I should say, and learning like, all right, this is a C chord, this is a G chord, this is an E minor or whatever. And like started mapping out those chords. I think I didn't really, I don't think I understood that frets existed. So I just started learning the shapes, even though it was like on the complete wrong fret. Looking back, it was probably very little use, but I think the passion that it showed was enough to show my parents like, oh, wow, he's interested in this. And they got me a guitar, an Ibanez sort of super metal Strat that I still have till this day.
Nice.
And from there, I just sort of got obsessed with music. And unlike the other hobbies, this one really stuck around.
That's awesome. How quickly did you start playing in bands?
So I played guitar by myself, jammed with that friend from school for a little bit, but just for fun. And in 8th, so I learned really quickly. I got in 7th grade. I was one of those kids that like, again, got super obsessed and like didn't have a social life for 2 years because all I was doing was my sole focus was to learn how to play guitar. So I got pretty good in a short amount of time just because I was spending like 8 hours a day in my room, just like practicing. So 8th to 9th grade, I joined this like metalcore band called Exiting the Fall that I met through some kids at church and became the guitarist there when I was in high school and played in that band all throughout high school and even a couple years after. And that was a big part of our life or my life for that good amount of time. And yeah, we had some like local hype, I would say. Like we did some touring, we had some local shows and when the time was to move on, we moved on, but it was a pretty big part. And it was just that band. And then I started writing solo music, and then Valleyheart came along third. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was gonna ask. I had an acquaintance who I would like play music with in circles down here for a minute, and he was into exiting.
Oh,
and
no
so
way.
yeah, he would, because I think he was, I don't know if he was originally from up that way or
What's his name?
just John Sissel.
Oh, dude, what?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Hold the phone. You do realize that John? Wait, hold on. You do realize that he wasn't into Exiting the Fall. He was in Exiting the Fall. Is that what you said?
No, I didn't know.
He started Exiting the Fall. He's the founding member.
There you go.
Wait, okay, hold on. This is about to get really funny. Okay. The reason I was in Exiting the Fall was because of John Sissel.
Nice.
So in 8th grade, all right, we're gonna deep dive. I was like, this story is not gonna be relevant at all, but now that you mentioned John,
here we go. Yeah.
Insane. So I lived in the town on sort of closer to Boston, and all the friends I have now, a lot of the friends I have now, people I've met through Valleyheart, sort of my web of friends that have spawned from like that young a time that I'm still friends with and like has the Valleyheart group, came from this one youth group called Calvary Christian Church where we all met. But I wasn't a part of this youth group innately. Sort of on a random Friday night, I decided to visit this like random church event that like from this church I didn't even go to. And at this event, there was a youth group conference with a bunch of different youth groups. And this was a Brazilian church, just the most random thing. And I went with a friend, and I was talking to my buddy Petrus, another friend we have. We were talking about the Almost, the band, because we were super into them at the time. Like I was loving their Southern Weather record, and we were chatting about them. And there were just a bunch of like teenagers there. And then this random kid comes up to me. He says, "Did you say the Almost?" We're like, yeah, the Almost. He goes, "Come with me." And he just grabs us and he introduces us to like all his friends from youth group. He's like, "These guys are cool. They know the Almost." And like, we're getting to know these people. And that kid was John Sissel. And he tapped on my shoulder that night and completely changed my life, because from that night on, my friend Petrus and I, we met one of my best friends, John Miller, who was the drummer for Valleyheart for many years. We met all the friends that I think that later became like the web of circle of friends that we have now. But it was from that one night in 8th grade that John came up to us and sort of started that conversation. And we started going to that youth group, Calvary Christian Church. And yeah, that's when I started playing Exiting the Fall and played it with John. And then John moved to Southeast. He went to Southeastern for college. He left the band. We got a new singer, and then the band kind of turned into something completely different. But John Sissel was the songwriter, sort of what I am to Valleyheart, he was to Exiting the Fall, and then it kind of changed over the years. But that's so funny that you said that. Yeah, and then he was in DC for a while. Yeah, and then he was in California, and now he's back in the South. Yeah,
that's funny.
That's so funny.
It's a small world, especially like in the music scene, right? If you have a connection, you probably touch somebody somewhere. And like,
yeah, I know. And I was expecting to hear someone like, "Oh, I know that guy. Like, I remember that guy." When you said John Sissel, my mind was just like, "What? This is too funny."
That's awesome.
Oh man, I miss that guy. I love him a lot. Yeah, it's so nice to hear his name.
That was awesome. It's awesome. Where'd the name Valleyheart come from?
So I'll be real with you. There wasn't this sort of super intentional idea of this is the meaning of the band. We're going to create this meaning and then put it out.
Yeah.
It was more of a name that came up between our guitarist and I, and we were sort of just brainstorming names for a couple weeks, and nothing was really feeling good. I think we were just sort of throwing things at a wall and then seeing how it felt, right? Like with the music, with the vibe we were going for, and everything was just like, And then that came up and we were like, oh, like that feels, so there's a feeling there to that. There's something that feels sort of profound there, or sort of just nice. And then we sort of kept it. And to be honest with you, I don't think there was like a moment of truly saying, okay, this is what it means. But over the years, I've sort of assigned my own meaning to the band name, which I could share, but I think it can have many different perspectives. Sure. But, I think that there are moments in our lives where we go through shit, right? And we go through, whether it's grief or sort of a loss of a relationship or a loss of a job or a friend group or even just the loss of the years, right? Just getting older, aging, all this stuff. And it seems like there's a theme in our songs about these topics, about those moments in the valley of your life, so to say. And I think that now that I look at sort of our discography, especially with this new record, it's like, well, we're writing songs for people who are going through those moments in life. And to have a companion that is the relatability of music and songwriting to help people feel like they're not alone in those parts and to not sink into those seasons of life, but to go through them. So yeah, that's a little profound and deep and not something that was intentional, but sort of just looking at the story and the lyrics and sort of the heart, no pun intended, of what this band is. It feels like that, you know?
Yeah. What led you guys to Rise Records?
They sent us an email and they wanted to sign us. So yeah, it was that simple.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's Rise is one of those labels that like I hated for a long time because they were doing like it was all like the Attack Attacks and like the Christcore Under Oath wannabes.
Yes.
And then I don't remember what the first band was that signed with them where I was like, okay, I got to buy a record that Rise puts out. And then like everything they release is great now. So
yeah. I think there's sort of man, this stuff always interests me just because I grew up in that Christian metalcore scene, right? And like the culture of music, and it's funny to say that there was a culture there in that whole Attack world, but there was, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, it's almost like looking back and looking at sort of the weird culture of the 90s or the 80s, and whether we think it's cool or not, like looking back, like the shows that were being played, the culture of the Cornerstone Fests and the like floor shows, it's like such a moment in time. And now that I think we're 20 years out or maybe 15 years out, I look back and I'm just like, whoa, like there was such an intense, like there was a look, there was a fashion involved with that scene. And it's hilarious, it's funny. But you're right, it was sort of like influenced so many people. You know, sort of these genres sometimes bands blow up, right? But sometimes bands and their style blow up. I think Attack Attack was one of those bands where like they just did a thing and then everyone was doing it, like everywhere. Like random kids from like, you know, small town Texas were starting like a crabcore band and it was just like a plague. And it was so interesting. It's just such a, there's a documentary on YouTube. This dude, he does like deep dives of just pockets of music like that. And he did one on like Rise Records and Attack Attack. And again, not something I think thought these days would interest me, but watching it, I was very intrigued. It was like 20 minutes long and it was like breaking down sort of the whole dynamic of like Joey Sturgis core bands. And it was really interesting. How did COVID affect us? Wow, that's a big question. As a band, individually, I can speak for myself, of course. Musically, all of the above.
Yeah.
Well, man, this is a deep question. I'm just trying to see where to start. Well, I think that, as we all know, during COVID, we couldn't do much to distract ourselves for a time there, from maybe stuff we haven't dealt with, that I hadn't dealt with. Right. So, yeah. So my story from COVID is the first month of March 2020. My partner and we got stuck in Peru for a month. When the lockdown, so COVID hit and we were in Peru and borders closed and we got stuck there for a whole month. And that's my first sort of crazy, traumatic, wild, pressing experience, was being stuck with a lot of uncertainty for a month. I mean, we got rescue flights back from our respective countries because she's Canadian and I'm American. And I don't have time to fully tell the story, but it was, just sort of chaos of just the borders closing overnight, like airports shutting down and thousands of tourists being stuck, like everyone trying to find an Airbnb, and like the whole place just being in like utter chaos. I mean, the United States was in chaos, right? Like the grocery stores, like we were in Peru and like it was crazy, man. And luckily we ended up finding a place, and we were up in Machu Picchu when they announced it. So all our stuff was like, I don't know if you've been to Peru, but it's like, you have. Yeah. Okay. So you understand, we were up in Machu Picchu with like a day trip backpack, and all our stuff was in Cusco. And they announced that the bus that goes from Machu Picchu, we actually did get to see Machu Picchu, which they made the announcement at 11 p.m. at night. We were going to wake up at 5 to do the trek, and we were in Aguascalientes. So we were right on the edge of seeing it. And then the whole country shut down, and they were like, we're closed. You got to get back to your Airbnb. You got to leave. So it was this just insane moment of just like being at the foot of one of the wonders of the world, not seeing it, and then scrambling back, which that drive is down a mountain through one of the most dangerous roads in the world, in utter chaos, like random citizens of Peru, like piling people in their personal car because the buses had shut down. Insane story, but this is the long answer. Went down, found shelter. So that was the start of COVID for me. It's just like a lot of chaos and uncertainty. And then finally, a month later, we made it back home and had a lot of time to reflect, a lot of time to write. And, I think COVID, or that whole early pandemic period, was such an interesting time that, like I said, you didn't have the opportunity to like just be going to sort of use the drug of busyness to distract you, or sort of null the pain or all that stuff. So I think like a therapy session that can feel very, very painful in other ways and very good in the long term, that whole season felt like that. It felt like, shit's getting real, and you have to deal with maybe these things you've put off because of your accomplishments, your goals, or like who you are, like Kevin as a musician, Kevin as a this. And there wasn't that. There was just Kevin, and there was, who are you when you go to bed at night, and there's just hours and hours to think and feel and all this stuff. So, I think this album, Heal My Head, was the journal of that process. Yeah. Completely. Like all the lyrics were written in that sort of 2020 phase. And it was just coming to terms with those things, and shame that had gone unaddressed, and sort of self-forgiveness and spiritual things that had gone unaddressed, and lots of things that I had to deal with and bring out with others and with myself and with my therapist. And I think going through it was a lot. Like, I think everyone has a very similar story. I think now that we're on the other side, not that I think we're healed or anything, but I think we're more aware of like the dynamic of how busyness, accomplishment doesn't necessarily fill that void. And I think we're living in the post realization of that. Okay. And I'm still working through that, because I find myself going back to those old ways sometimes of like, oh, I'm just going to stay busy and keep my head down now that like shows are coming back, things are coming back, music's coming back. But then I'm like, wait, this didn't work the first time. Like, how do I stay sort of grounded in myself, not as a musician, but as a person? So I think COVID made me much more aware of that. COVID's also, I think, made everyone a little socially anxious, where I'm still dealing with that, where it's like we had our release party and it was great. There were people there, and there's still just a piece of me that's just like, man, this feels still surreal, so many things. But I think for the most part, it changed me for the better, of just being more aware of what I want to do, who I am, and the person I want to be, even though it took a hard path to get there.
I got sober during like the pandemic and lockdown. And so
Really?
start being a therapist and like, yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, you're just like,
Yeah.
man, I got some shit I gotta
Isn't
do
it? Isn't
like,
it crazy though? Isn't it crazy to think how it took a world apocalyptic event for that to happen though, for so many people, like including myself? It's just like, that's how much because these things are hard. They're not easy to bring up. They go years back and they're unexplainable. But man, I think it's worth it in the long run.
What led you guys to Tooth and Nail Records?
An email. Emails seem to be the way of communication here. No, it was sort of one of their people, one of their guys there, reaching out and sort of starting a conversation. And we were off of Rise at the time, sort of doing stuff independently and very into the idea of doing stuff independently. I started learning. Another thing I picked up during COVID was I learned how to sort of produce and engineer and mix a lot more, which was also part of this record. But I don't know, it was just sort of on that wave of like, I want to do everything myself, which had its really great moments, but maybe had its moments where I learned that like, nope, it's nice to have a team and collaboration and people filling in the gaps of things you can't do. So I think for a long time, I was like a little hesitant, not for any other reason of just wanting to do things alone, which was sort of the vibe of Scenery all together, which was our last EP, which is sort of this like isolation, introspection sort of energy. But they were really persistent and really excited about doing something together and kept checking in and kept sort of pursuing us. And it ended up sort of being at a situation where it's like, wow, like this will feel like a partnership, which is what I always wanted.
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh yeah, like cool, like these guys are just down, whatever. So that really sort of led us to them and opening the door to that relationship, and we're still here. It's been really good.
That's cool. Was there any hesitancy because Tooth and Nail, even we're like a decade since they've like really let go of being a Christian label or whatever, like there's still that baggage when records come out on Tooth and Nail. I was talking to a friend of mine and I was like, it's still listening to your record. And I was like, it's still really weird to pick up a CD with Tooth and Nail's logo and hear somebody say fuck on it, even though I say it every day. So that's
yeah.
So is there was there that hesitancy of like, oh, we don't want to have this baggage that like people might have an expectation or we might get shit from people because of the lyrical content of our record that's on Tooth and Nail? Or was it just like, they're cool and they're down with what we're doing? So like,
yeah, the honest answer is there was that hesitancy. And what's cool is from the get-go, I didn't feel afraid to say that to them. Yeah. And I was pretty honest about that dynamic. And I was like, hey guys, like I'm not, and I think you might know this from our last record. Yeah. I was saying to them, not in a place where we're a Christian band or anything like that. Obviously these topics are about my life and faith and all this stuff, but we're not writing with any agenda at all, just like writing. And from the beginning, they were like, do whatever, like there's no expectation, there's no pressure. So from their end, there was none of that. But like you said, I think from the outside, there always is some of that. And I was concerned about like, oh man, like how does that feel? How does that look? Like, is that going to be weird? But you know, I think what really got me over that was realizing that they might be a label with that baggage and trying to redefine themselves, but I'm a person with that baggage and trying to redefine myself, right? So that's my background too. That's my story too. And I think what I found cool was like, whoa, wait a minute. I think there might be those oddballs and outliers who are like, you said fuck, like that's weird. But I think for the most part, people who grew up on Tooth and Nail, a lot of them are in a phase of their life right now where they're questioning their faith. They're questioning the foundation of their faith, and there's all these buzzwords right now, like deconstructing and all that stuff. And I don't know much about that scene, but like just the idea of like coming to terms with what your faith looks like in that culture. And I saw an opportunity instead of like, oh, how do we distance ourselves from like that altogether? Just because I don't really sort of believe in like traditional Christianity anymore, but like, whoa, like feels like we're collectively all asking these questions. What if Valleyheart is a band that just helps people process those things? I think that'd be a good fit, right? Yeah. If we can let go of that like old Christian band mentality. And again, that might come at the sacrifice of a few people who are still in that world, but that feels so 2008 to me that I'm just like, I think most people don't care and just like want music to help them. And yeah, instead of sort of backing away from anything Christian, I was like, well, this is part of my story. And though I don't identify in this traditional way anymore, I am still dealing in my own life with the baggage that is Christianity and the good that I got from it and the bad, and processing that. I don't think there are people who do it, and I've seen it, of just like, I want nothing to do with that scene. I don't want to talk about it. Like, I don't want to be a part of it because I'm just not there anymore. And I'm like, cool, I get that. Like, I really get that. But I don't know. I guess I decided, hey, let's try to go a different route. When the Tooth and Nail opportunity came up, I was like, this feels cool, because I think a lot of people on this who listen to this label, who have listened to this label, aren't people who are like these like traditional Christians, but I think are just like people in their mid to late 20s, like myself, or just like kind of in a time of understanding and figuring out what values they do want to reconstruct in their life. So I think, yeah, it felt like let's lean into this cultural aspect of it rather than like defer ourselves from it.
Right.
And that was a big part of the decision of like, this could be a really cool sort of new era for Tooth and Nail, but also just for like what it means to be a band in a world adjacent to that world. I gotta be real with you. I mean, I know what I'm singing, and I say a couple words, those words in the album, but it's one of those things where I didn't even remember. Like we posted our song Miracle, we released it, and someone in the comments was like, "Oh, the fuck, whatever," and I was like, "Man, I didn't even realize that I say that word." It's not like. It's so not a central piece to what is, it's just like it's just what I wrote. I don't know. It's just like, I said the word like, city, like, it's just one of those things where it's just the idea I was trying to express.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I think sometimes those words just pop out, right? So someone's like, oh, they're trying to make a statement by saying that. And sometimes people are, but for us, like for me, it's like, I say that sort of interlaced in my normal vocabulary from time to time, if it warrants that expression. So it's no different in the music. But I understand from a listener's perspective, it can feel like, whoa. But again, I was like, oh, wow, I do say that. Interesting.
Yeah. I saw someone's Twitter bio once. It was agnostic with the background in Christianity. And I was like, yeah, I like that. I feel that.
Yeah, man, that's kind of where I'm at, where, I think, a lot of stuff on this record feel that way, but there's not a lot I feel like I can say for certain, but I do know that I feel like there is something behind the curtain somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think I spent a lot of my life with that like drug of certainty of like, no, it's this Jesus, it's this youth group Jesus who like approves hardcore music and like, and whatever. It's just like this own version. And I don't know, there's so much to say there, but I'm still very much figuring it out, but also not trying to lose my mind with deconstructing all my values, but having stuff I do believe in. And I do believe in like letting go of that like absolute certainty, and listening to other people's perspective on faith is just beautiful, and like is a value I want in my life, and never to be on the us and them side of things. So.
What's the rest of this year look like for you? The record just came out this past Friday.
Yeah. Well, we're sort of riding that wave right now. Never have been so intense in the release process of a record. We did like a bunch of videos, which we hadn't really done for our past records. It was sort of just the like, oh, write the record, record the record, mix the record, master the record, just put it out. But we really wanted to be intentional with the visuals this time around. Really wanted to be intentional with the videos and just everything. It just felt like an extension of what we were doing rather than like, oh, these are the things we have to do to promote the record. So I've kind of just been in that world. And now that the record's out, it's like, cool, what's next? So we're playing some shows. We have an album release show in Massachusetts in Somerville on July 23rd at the Arts at the Armory. And that's going to be announced this week. And we're super excited about that. We're going to be playing a lot of the songs from the new album, some old songs. We're going to keep promoting this record. We're going to keep sort of doing stuff like this and hopefully hit the road at the end of the summer and early fall. Nothing's set yet, but we're just looking to bring the show on the road and see what conversations Heal My Head brings up. And go from
Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcast and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.
I never felt so young and alive as when I'm diving into a tune. And now I'm learning as I listen along, and the wheels are turning, and I started a song. One good word and I'm gone. Oh, as the story grows, the more I want to know, the more I want to show you. As the story grows, as the story grows. You can create something lasting and great, something passionate and real. And I'll bring in my own good feelings, I'll sing it with meaning. Let's just attack it and never look back. It's wild and fantastic. All together at full power, we're so much better. What's that word?